She laughed as if she hadn't just shattered me in front of everyone. I remember watching the dessert fork spin slowly on the table, still clutched in my hand. I wasn't even breathing, just sitting there, eyes locked on nothing, heartbeat pounding so hard I thought it would shake the wine glasses. There was this strange silence around me, people laughing, chatting, clinking drinks, but in my head, it was pure, static white. "Come on, Jonas, it was just a joke," she said again, nudging me under the table with her pointed heel, as if poking a dying animal. "Don't go all fragile on me now." Fragile? That was the word she used. I stood up. Not dramatically. Not storming out. Just stood up. Quietly. Left my jacket. Left my untouched plate of overpriced halibut. Didn't say a word. Didn't even look at her. My legs moved on their own, past the rows of tables, past her friends and coworkers whispering into their wine glasses. And I kept walking. Out of the restaurant. Out of the evening we were supposed to celebrate. Out of the role I'd been playing for 8 years. The air outside was sharp, colder than expected for spring. My phone buzzed in my pocket, her name glowing bright across the screen, but I let it die. I walked 5 blocks before I realized I had nowhere to go. I hadn't driven. She had the keys. My apartment key was still in the small inner pocket of the coat I left draped over the back of that chair, the one she told me made me look like an emotional accountant. I ducked into a bookstore just to disappear. Sat behind a row of historical biographies and let the minutes pass like fog. I think that was the first time I allowed the question to fully form in my head. Who the hell am I when I'm not her husband? The answer? A man who hasn't been seen, heard, or respected in a very long time. Because that night, like so many before it, my wife turned me into a party trick. A joke. And this time, she didn't even flinch when the punchline landed. I'd been preparing for that dinner for 2 weeks. Ironed my own shirt. Practiced casual conversation lines in the mirror. I even bought special insoles because she said I walked like a cartoon duck when I got tired. The whole night was supposed to be about her promotion, but also a chance for me to finally fit in with her work crowd. Instead, she told the table that I once cried during a commercial about recycling. And the room held. I didn't correct her. I didn't remind her it wasn't a commercial, it was a documentary about sea turtles choking on plastic. I didn't tell them that I cry because I feel too much. Not because I'm weak. I just sat there. Like always. I don't even remember the rest of the jokes she made, just that she said them with her hand on Owen's arm. Owen, her new manager. The one she said was too young for her but had a genius mind for strategy. The one whose name started appearing more frequently in our texts. The one she started dressing different for. The one who laughed hardest at the joke about me not being able to change a tire without watching 3 YouTube videos. But what she didn't know, was that earlier that day, I'd already found the messages. The ones she didn't delete properly. The ones that made me scroll back through months of conversations I never realized weren't meant for me. Messages that made me feel like my whole marriage had been quietly switched out with something else, something colder. So when she humiliated me in front of everyone, what she didn't realize was that she wasn't hurting me for the first time. She was confirming everything I had already learned. And still, I wanted to pretend it wasn't real. I wanted to sit there and be the good husband, the quiet one, the joke that everyone could laugh at while sipping Cabernet. But I didn't. I left. And that's when everything spiraled. What happened after I walked out changed everything, not just for her, but for me. Because the moment she realized I wasn't coming back, she did something I never expected. And that's where things get really, really strange. I didn't go home that night. I know that probably sounds petty to some people, but it wasn't about punishing her. I wasn't trying to make her panic. I just couldn't. I couldn't sit across from her at the kitchen counter while she pretended not to remember what she'd done. I couldn't climb into bed next to the woman who used my pain to entertain people who didn't even know my middle name. Instead, I slept on a bench at the waterfront, wrapped in my own thoughts and the faint smell of fish from the docks. My back ached. My hands were cold. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was making a decision for myself. And strangely, that discomfort felt better than the numbness I'd grown used to. Around 6 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from her. Just 3 words. "Where are you?" No question mark. No. I'm worried. No apology. No anything. Just a flat demand, like I'd missed a meeting. And even the text came 7 hours after I walked out. I didn't reply. I went to my brother Nolan's place instead. He lives above a failing nail salon and survives mostly on energy drinks and expired cereal, but he's the only person I know who won't ask questions until I'm ready. He handed me a blanket, offered me the couch, and didn't say a word when I sat down and immediately burst into tears. That kind of silence is rare and healing. By the time I finally got the courage to check my phone again, I had 8 missed calls from her, 3 voicemails, and this part still rattles me, a message from her mother. Her mother, who has never texted me in the entire 8 years we've been married. It just said, "You're embarrassing her. Whatever this is, deal with it privately." That message hit like a punch to the gut. Not because it was mean, but because it was expected. That's how it's always been with Rena. She breaks the rules. I suffer in silence. If I speak up, I'm weak. If I walk away, I'm selfish. And when I finally put up a boundary, I'm the villain. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened her messages again, the ones I'd found the day before the dinner. The ones that showed me exactly how far gone she already was. It started with little things, of course. They always do. A laughing emoji. A compliment from Owen, her manager, on her new blazer. Then her replying with, "You have good taste, winky face." That was 6 months ago. I scrolled further. Compliments turned into inside jokes. Inside jokes turned into personal photos. Not nudes, nothing explicit. But the kind of photos you send when you want someone to notice how you're posing. Then there was a message that stopped me cold. It was a screenshot she'd taken of my Google Calendar, where I'd blocked off time for therapy, something I'd been quietly doing to manage my anxiety. She sent it to him with the caption, "Guess he needs a whole hour to recover from grocery shopping, LOL." And Owen replied, "Poor guy. You must feel like you're raising a third child." I don't know how long I stared at that message. My fingers went numb. My mouth was dry. I wasn't even angry. I just felt erased. Like I'd spent years trying to be enough for her, only to be reduced to a side character in her private comedy. I remember whispering to myself, "I think she actually hates me." That's what started the spiral. That's what made me think maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just emotional neglect. Maybe there was more. So I started digging. And what I found next is something I've never told anyone. Not Nolan. Not my therapist. Not even myself. Really, not out loud. Because it's the moment I realized I was married to someone who had built a second life right next to mine. And I never noticed. It started with a name. Theo. I didn't recognize it at first. It wasn't in her phone, at least not obviously. But there were receipts from Venmo payments labeled Dog Park, Book Club, and Brunch. We don't have a dog. She doesn't read fiction. And she sure as hell hasn't brunched since the pandemic started. Theo was a pseudonym. But the number was real. And it connected to an Instagram account under the name Tom_Rocks, where the profile photo was of a man maybe 10 years younger than us. Muscular. Carefree. Always grinning into the sun with a guitar or a beer in hand. Buried in his tagged photos, past the beach shots, past the festival pictures, I found one that made my knees go weak. It was a photo of the back of Rena's head. She was sitting across from him at an outdoor cafe, wearing the denim jacket she told me she lost. Her fingers curled around a wine glass, leaning in, smiling. Her body language open in a way I hadn't seen in years, not even toward me. The caption? "Sundays are better with company." He tagged her. She wasn't hiding it from him. She was just hiding it from me. I closed the app, shut my phone off, and sat there in the dark, surrounded by the hum of Nolan's busted air conditioner and the soft scratching sound of his cat chewing on a remote. And for the first time, I said it out loud. She's cheating on me. And even then, part of me still hoped I was wrong. That maybe there was a version of the story where this all made sense. That maybe I wasn't just the punchline. But I was. And now I had to decide. Was I going to keep being the joke? Or was I finally going to become the one who walked away? I didn't know how to confront her. Every version I played in my head made me look either pathetic or crazy. There's something humiliating about having all the evidence, all the receipts, and still sitting there wondering if you might be the problem. That's what years of quiet belittlement does. It turns your instincts into question marks. For 3 days, I avoided our home. I made up a story about a work crisis to buy myself time. Nolan offered me his couch for as long as I needed, but I couldn't live off his expired granola bars and lukewarm tap water forever. Eventually, I'd have to face her. So I decided, instead of accusing, I'd observe. I needed to see with my own eyes what I had already seen through her messages. I needed it to be real, not just digital ghosts on a screen. I had to be there when her mask slipped. So I went home Thursday evening. When I walked through the door, she barely looked up from her laptop. "Oh, hey. Everything good at work?" she asked, her tone detached, casual. Like I hadn't vanished for 3 days. like she hadn't texted, called, and then gone radio silent. I nodded and said, "Yeah, just hectic," and walked past her without a hug. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. The next 2 days were a blur of practiced smiles and surface-level conversation. We discussed groceries. Trash day. Whether the dishwasher was making a weird noise. But beneath the thin crust of domestic routine, everything buzzed with this invisible static. I watched her phone more than I watched her face. I noticed how she'd angle the screen away from me when it lit up. How she would take it into the bathroom and come back 15 minutes later smiling faintly. I started to take notes, literally, in a small pad I kept tucked in my hoodie pocket. Every suspicious moment, every interaction, every name that slipped out of her mouth and didn't feel quite right. I was building a case. Not for divorce. Not yet. But for clarity. For truth. For my own sanity. And then Saturday arrived. That morning, she told me she was meeting Jenna from Pilates for coffee. Jenna, who I hadn't heard her mention in months. Jenna, who she once said moved to Phoenix or some *T. I told her to have fun, then waited precisely 10 minutes after she left before I followed. I didn't even have a plan. I just knew that if she was lying again, I needed to see it for myself. I took Nolan's car. Mine was too recognizable. I stayed back, far enough to not be obvious, close enough to track her. She didn't go to any cafe. She drove past downtown, then into a neighborhood I didn't recognize, trendy, loud, with overpriced juice bars and murals of abstract foxes on the walls. She parked in front of an apartment building I'd never seen. She didn't text anyone, didn't pause. She just walked in like she'd done it 100 times before. I waited, and 20 minutes later, he stepped outside. Theo. Tom. Whatever the hell he called himself. The guy from Instagram. The one with the smug grin and the arms that looked like they'd been grown in a lab specifically for hugging other men's wives. He came out, laughed at something on his phone, and then walked 2 blocks to a food truck like it was the most normal Saturday in the world. I should have confronted him. I should have stormed into that building and demanded to see her. I should have kicked the stupid food truck and set the sidewalk on fire. But I didn't. I sat in Nolan's rattling Honda Civic and just stared at the empty doorway, trying to process what it meant that my wife had disappeared into someone else's home like it was a second skin. I waited 2 hours. When she finally came out, she looked different. Not physically. But there was something in the way she carried herself, lighter, freer, like she had left behind the weight of being my wife inside those walls. She didn't even look around. Just got in her car and drove off, humming with the windows down like she was 17 again. I didn't follow her. I drove back to Nolan's. And I cried. Not the kind of crying you do when something sad happens. The kind that comes from watching the lie unravel right in front of you, from realizing the person you've been building a life with has been carving escape tunnels through your trust for months. I called in sick to work the next day. Sat in the dark, phone in hand, staring at her contact photo. I scrolled through old texts, photos from our last vacation, her saying "I love you" with 3 exclamation points, her laughing at my terrible pancakes. None of it looked real anymore. It all felt retroactively fake, like she had been writing a script while already auditioning for the next show. But the worst part? I still wanted her to love me. Even after all of it, part of me still wanted her to walk through the door, fall to her knees, admit everything, and beg for forgiveness. I wanted to believe this was a mistake, that maybe Theo was just a reaction to her feeling neglected, or bored, or misunderstood. But I knew better. And then, that night, I got an email. From a name I didn't recognize. No subject line. No message body. Just a single attachment. A video file. I should have deleted it. I should have blocked the sender. But I opened it. And what I saw changed everything. The video wasn't long, 43 seconds to be exact. But it hit harder than anything I could have imagined. When I clicked play, I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a message from Theo mocking me. Maybe a clip of Rena and him kissing outside his building. Something cheap. But it wasn't that. It was way worse. The camera angle was shaky at first, then it settled, clearly filmed from a phone, maybe through a cracked door or window. I could hear music faintly playing in the background, some indie pop song that I used to have on our shared playlists. And then I saw her, Rena, sitting on a couch with her legs curled under her, laughing into a wine glass, in that high-pitched laugh she usually reserved for when she wanted to seem unbothered. And next to her, Theo, shirtless, not touching her, just smiling, like they were waiting for something. A few seconds later, the front door in the video opened, and a third man walked in. Tall, mid-30s, scruffy beard, wearing a gray hoodie. Rena immediately got up, kissed him on the cheek, then turned back toward Theo and raised her glass. "Don't worry," she said. "He's way more fun than my husband. This one doesn't flinch when I make a joke." They all laughed. The man she kissed dropped a bag of takeout on the table and sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist like it was second nature, like he had done it 100 times before. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, unable to even blink. I watched as my wife, my actual, legally married wife, leaned into two different men like she was playing musical chairs with her own loyalty. It wasn't just that she was cheating. It wasn't just that she was lying. It was how comfortable she was in that moment. Like there was nothing to hide. Like the version of her that lived with me was just a decoy for public appearances. Like this was the real her, and I was some dull character she'd written off halfway through the book. The worst part? Her laugh. That same shrill, sarcastic laugh she used at that dinner. I used to think it was her defense mechanism, her way of surviving corporate dinners and fake social circles. But now I realize it's who she chooses to be when she feels powerful, when she's in control. And in that room, with those two men, she was in complete control. I watched the clip again, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to believe it. I needed to make it real. I kept pausing on her expression. The ease, the warmth, the way she leaned into someone else like it cost her nothing, like I never existed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on Nolan's couch, the screen of my laptop dimming and lighting up over and over again as I replayed it. At 3:47 a.m., I finally asked Nolan the question I had been too embarrassed to say out loud. "How long do you think she's been living a double life?" He looked at me like I was asking whether water was wet. "Dude, you told me she stopped wearing her wedding ring 6 months ago. You really want an estimate now?" I felt stupid. Really stupid. Because he was right. The signs weren't subtle. They were neon. Blinking. Loud. I had just convinced myself they were quirks. Phases. Things I could wait out. I hadn't wanted to admit I was the guy who lost his marriage without even being consulted. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I emailed her boss. Not to tell him about the affair with Theo, no. I wasn't ready for that kind of mess. But I asked for a list of out-of-office records for the past year. Told him I was doing something legal and that I needed a paper trail. I wasn't even sure if he'd respond. But he did. Within 2 hours. PDF attached. Let me tell you something about Rena. She's brilliant at manipulation, but she's terrible at covering tracks. The document was a roadmap to her betrayal. Client meeting in Santa Cruz, lined up perfectly with Instagram photos of Theo surfing. Wellness retreat in Sedona fell right in line with a tagged post of her getting a couple's massage with neither of us in the frame. She had used her own job as an alibi for over a year. And no one questioned her. Not even me. That realization broke something I hadn't even known was still intact. My pride. Because somewhere in my gut, I'd always assumed that if something like this ever happened, I'd know. That I'd pick up on the vibe, the whispers, the cold shoulder. But I hadn't. I'd been living in a marriage where my wife had built entire weekends around other men, and I was still sitting there debating whether or not I'd overreacted to a dinner joke. It's not just about infidelity. It's about being made a fool. And now, with a video in my inbox and a trail of deceit in black and white, I had to ask myself something I wasn't ready for. Was I willing to keep living as a prop in her show? Or was I finally ready to become a man with an ending she didn't get to write? I didn't have an answer yet. But I did know this. I wasn't going to confront her like she expected. She was going to feel something she hadn't in a long time. Surprise. I didn't storm into the house. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even raise my voice. That's not who I am. I don't do chaos. I suffocate in it. And honestly, she wouldn't have noticed a meltdown if I tried. She would have just smirked and called it another one of Jonas's dramatic moments. So instead, I started with something small. I walked through the front door like nothing had happened. She was on the couch, eating sushi, wearing one of those oversized sweatshirts she always stole from my side of the closet. She looked up, startled for a second, then immediately shifted into a smile that made me nauseous. "Hey," she said, brushing soy sauce off her lip. "I thought you were still at Nolan's." "I was," I replied. "Just wanted to grab a few things." She raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Just stuff," I said. "Personal things." She watched me walk into the bedroom, probably assuming I was being fragile again, maybe sulking. She didn't know that my heart was pounding so loudly it was making my teeth hurt. I opened my dresser, pulled out my passport, my birth certificate, a stack of bank documents I kept buried under winter socks. I wasn't leaving yet. But I was preparing. Quietly. Methodically. The way someone like me has to. She came into the room and leaned against the doorframe. "Are you okay?" she asked, eyes narrowing. That question. The one she only asked when she was worried about appearances. Not me. Just what version of me might leak out in public. I smiled softly. "I'm just tired, Rena." She nodded slowly. "You seemed off." I wanted to laugh. Off? I was unraveling at the seams, and she was calling it off, like I was a damn light switch flickering too much. But I kept my cool. Maybe I just need space to think. Her face flickered. Barely. But I caught it. That was the moment she realized I wasn't clinging anymore. I left shortly after, claiming Nolan needed help moving a futon. She didn't ask when I'd be back. Just said, "Okay," with a shrug so careless it was practically a confession. Back at Nolan's, I opened a spreadsheet. Yes, an actual spreadsheet. I needed to see it all laid out, not emotionally, but analytically. The receipts. The dates. The travel expenses that didn't align. The screenshots. The file from her boss. The video. Everything. I called the folder Exit Prep. Because this wasn't just about leaving a marriage anymore. This was about leaving a system of silence. But I wasn't going to just vanish. I needed her to feel it. Not through revenge. I'm not built for that. But through exposure. Through clarity. Through a spotlight she couldn't joke her way out of. So I came up with a plan. We were supposed to attend her sister's engagement dinner the following week. A big gathering. Fancy venue. Both sides of the family. Her coworkers. Mutual friends. She'd already bought a dress for the occasion, something emerald green that she said made her feel expensive. She wanted to show me off, she said. Prove to everyone that things were solid again. I agreed to go. I told her I'd shaved for it. That I'd even booked a haircut. She looked thrilled. Said, "See? We're getting back to normal." Normal. The word made me sick. She spent the whole week prepping. Nails done. Teeth whitened. She even cooked one night, which she hadn't done in months, grilled chicken with that weird quinoa mix I pretended to like. I nodded, smiled, played the part. All while preparing the file. I printed everything. Not in some dramatic folder labeled Truth or You Betrayed Me. No. Just a clean black envelope with gold foil lettering that said, For the Future. I'm corny like that. At the dinner, she was glowing. Commanding. She wore the dress like armor, hair swept up, cheeks slightly flushed from the white wine she sipped too fast. She introduced me to everyone like we were still us. I played along. Smiled, nodded, listened. Until dessert. That's when I got up. Quietly. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask for attention. I just walked to her chair and gently placed the envelope in front of her. She blinked. Confused. What's this? I leaned down, close enough that only she could hear. You once said I was like emotional support with a beard, I whispered. Turns out, I needed support too. But you were too busy laughing. Then I walked out. Left the envelope, left the party, left her stunned at a table surrounded by people who knew nothing, yet, about who she really was. I didn't go back to Nolan's this time. I booked a small Airbnb on the outskirts of town. A quiet place with mismatched furniture and creaky floors. It felt honest. It felt like somewhere I could begin again, if only for a while. I turned off my phone that night. Because I knew once she opened the envelope, everything would start unraveling. And I didn't want to hear her panic yet. I wanted her to sit in silence. The same way I did, for years. I turned my phone on the next morning expecting a few missed calls. Maybe a handful of texts laced with confusion or denial. What I got was a war zone. 23 missed calls. 17 text messages. 2 voicemails, one of which was over 3 minutes long. And a single email, sent at 2:06 a.m., titled, What is wrong with you? I didn't open any of them. Not right away. I just sat there in the musty Airbnb kitchen, staring at the wall as the old refrigerator hummed behind me like it had a secret to keep. The air felt thick, like the house knew something was coming. When I finally opened the messages, I didn't start with hers. I started with my sister-in-law. She texted, Lowell. I don't know what to say. Rena's having some kind of meltdown. She left the dinner early, like in tears. What was in that envelope? She won't say anything. Then my brother. What the hell, man? I heard from Mom that Rena accused you of sabotaging her job. You okay? And then, Rena's first message. What is this? What the hell is this? You made me look insane in front of my entire family. Then another. Is this some kind of punishment? You are not the victim here, Jonas. Then more. You had no right to bring my personal life into this. You've always been weak, but this is disgusting. Call me now before this gets worse. And then the one that told me everything I needed to know. You're ruining everything. I can't fix this if you go nuclear. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even shocked. She was angry I didn't let her control the narrative. That envelope didn't just contain printed screenshots and timestamps. It contained truth. And it wasn't just proof of the cheating, it was structured, cataloged, and explained in a way that made it impossible for her to spin it into another joke. I'd even included a timeline, dates, locations, receipts, all mapped out in a way that showed clear deception. There was no wiggle room for performance. No chance to slip out of it with a clever smirk or dismissive shrug. I had finally spoken in a language she couldn't interrupt. The voicemail, though, that's where it got messy. I hit play. Her voice was shaky at first, the kind of shaky that doesn't come from sadness but fury masked as fragility. Jonas, you really think this was the way? You humiliated me. I had coworkers there. My sister's fiancé's parents were sitting across from me. You made me look like some kind of monster. Then her voice dropped, quieter, more bitter. You always do this. Play the sad little man. The victim. But you never fought for me. You never made me feel wanted. You just sat there all these years, letting everything happen around you. What did you think was going to happen? And then she said it. The one line that shattered the tiny remnant of love I was still clinging to. You're the reason I cheated. There it was. Not regret. Not reflection. Blame. She couldn't even own her betrayal in private. She needed to twist it into some morality tale where she was forced to lie, forced to sneak around, forced to tear our life apart because I wasn't loud enough, strong enough, fast enough. I never made the stage shake when I entered a room, so she found people who did, and when they used her, discarded her, made her a side piece, she came crawling back into my silence, expecting it to swallow the truth like it always had. But this time, it didn't. I didn't call her back. Instead, I packed my things and left the Airbnb. I didn't go home. I didn't go to Nolan's. I drove 2 towns over and checked into a roadside motel under my middle name. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to think without her shadow moving across the room. And that's when something unexpected happened. A notification. Email. From Theo. The subject line, "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long time, my hands sweating, my heart racing. I didn't even know how he got my email. Maybe she told him. Maybe he found it on one of the receipts I left in the envelope. I didn't know. But curiosity overrode my exhaustion, and I opened it. Jonas. I didn't know she was married when we started seeing each other. I found out months in, and by then it was complicated. I ended things weeks ago, well before your note at the dinner. She told me you were separated but living together. I believed her. Stupidly. I'm not proud of any of this. But I thought you deserved to hear it from me. Also, she's been seeing someone else. Not just me. I'm sorry. Theo. My blood ran cold. I reread it. Another one? There was another man. Possibly more. While I was losing sleep over Theo, she had already moved on from him to someone else. She was rotating people like backup batteries, grabbing whatever gave her the most charge in that moment. And just like that, something inside me clicked. It was never about me being weak. It was about her needing to dominate, manipulate, and devour. Not love. Not partnership. But control. And the moment I stopped giving her that control, she cracked. And I hadn't even started yet. I sat in that motel room for nearly 2 days straight, pacing between the peeling wallpaper and the creaky mattress, unable to decide whether to be enraged, relieved, or completely numb. The email from Theo replayed in my mind like a ticking metronome, steady and merciless. There was someone else. Another man. Not in the past, in parallel. That was the part that rewired something inside me. I wasn't just left behind. I had been erased mid-sentence. You know what's strange? When betrayal hits a second time, it's not as loud. It's quieter. Heavier. Like trying to scream underwater. I kept telling myself I should be angry. Furious. But all I could feel was this blank, hollow silence, like my entire marriage had been a dress rehearsal for a play that only she knew the ending of. The second man's name wasn't in Theo's email. But I was done guessing. I opened our shared desktop at the house remotely through my cloud login, something she had forgotten I could do. Rena was never careful with files. She was always smart about people, dumb about details. That was the irony of our whole relationship. She knew how to manipulate a room but never backed up her hard drive. She knew how to destroy reputations but couldn't remember to close her email app when she left the house. It took me 5 minutes to find him. Buried in a folder labeled Consulting was a collection of PDFs, receipts, and Zoom screenshots, all of them tied to a man named Davis Whitcomb. A name I hadn't heard before. But his face? It was unmistakable. He was one of the speakers at the Women in Business panel we attended together 9 months ago, the same event where she publicly joked that I was like an emotional support pet. I remember shaking his hand afterward. He gave one of those limp, disinterested handshakes, the kind that tells you someone's looking over your shoulder while they greet you. I thought nothing of it. Just another alpha-type networking junkie who talked about synergy like it was a religion. Apparently, he thought something of me. Or rather, something of her. I scrolled through photos of them at airport lounges, bar receipts from New Orleans, a rental car booking in both their names. And then, a photo that stopped me cold. It was a mirror selfie of the two of them. He was shirtless. She was in the same red tank top she wore the night she told me she was going out for a quick dinner with the girls. In the background, I could see my travel bag. My suitcase. The one she took without asking while I was out of town for work. She didn't just lie. She used my things to do it. She had turned my belongings into props for her double life. And right then, I felt something shift. Not rage. Not sorrow. Control. I realized for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I had nothing left to protect. No image. No legacy. No fragile marriage I was trying to glue back together with borrowed hope. Everything was broken. And broken things don't scare you when you finally learned how to walk barefoot across the shards. I gathered all the files and dumped them into a new drive when I labeled closure. Then I called a lawyer. A real one. Not a friend of a friend who offers casual advice over drinks. A serious, contract-shredding, paper-burning divorce attorney named Eliza Silver. She didn't blink when I said I had evidence. She didn't flinch when I said I wanted no negotiation. "You're done trying to make her understand," Eliza said, flipping through my folder during our first meeting. "Now you make her watch the fallout." She advised me not to confront Rena yet. Not directly. "You're not here for a soap opera," she said. "You're here to end a transaction." It was brutal, cold, and exactly what I needed. But just when I thought I had everything under control, something else happened. I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in 5 years. My ex-fiancée. Her name's Talia. We hadn't spoken since Rena and I got engaged. She had moved overseas, started a new life, and I'd buried that chapter so deeply I forgot it even had loose ends. Her message? "Hey, this might be weird, but I saw something on Facebook. Rena posted a photo last year from Prague. She was with a man named Davis, I think. I recognized him. He used to date my old college roommate. He's, bad news, Jonas. I think you should know she's not his first affair. He's done this before. He targets women in relationships. Married once. I didn't know you were with her." "I'm sorry." My fingers went cold on the screen. So this man, Davis, wasn't just some accidental connection. He was a predator. A pattern. And Rena? She wasn't the first, just the next. That's when I realized something darker. This wasn't just about infidelity. Or loneliness. Or ego. It was about addiction. She was addicted to the validation, the danger, the fantasy. She was addicted to escaping me, not because I was cruel, but because I was steady, kind, predictable, safe. And none of those things sparkle when you're constantly chasing the thrill of being someone else. I didn't respond to Talia's message. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the motel mirror, wondering how I had been so blind. But not anymore. Because I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't beg. I would let her arrive at the finish line and find it already closed. The morning I filed the divorce papers, the sky was clear in a way I hadn't seen in months. I remember standing outside the courthouse with my coffee still warm, holding a manila folder that didn't shake in my hands for the first time. I had spent so many nights thinking I'd break the day I signed those documents, but I didn't. I stood there, whole. Still dented, still recovering, but whole. Rena didn't take it well. The moment she received the official filing, she tried to call. I didn't answer. Then came the emails. The ones where she suddenly remembered how to be sweet. She sent me a message titled, "Please don't do this." And inside it was a photo of the two of us at a fair, years ago, laughing with our heads pressed together, back when we still believed the world was small enough to control. "I was stupid," she wrote. "But you were too quiet, Jonas. I didn't know what you needed." I didn't reply. Because it wasn't my job to teach someone how not to hurt me. She begged to meet. Said she didn't want things to end this way. Even offered to go to therapy this time. But that's the thing about people like her. They only offer healing when they feel abandoned, not when they're the ones doing the damage. I didn't ghost her. I just ended it differently than she expected. One last message. One sentence. Thank you for freeing me from the version of myself I thought I had to be for you. That was it. She didn't reply. And I think, for the first time in our marriage, she finally heard me. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was freeing. No more explaining my emotions like legal briefs. No more waiting to be ridiculed for crying during documentaries or panicking over canceled plans. No more needing to be fun, or loud, or more like Owen, or less like Jonas. I moved out of state quietly. Not far. Just far enough to breathe. I got a job doing digital records management for a nonprofit that rescues old libraries from budget cuts. It sounds boring, maybe. But every day I scan books, organize memories, and keep quiet systems running. It's not glamorous, but for once, I don't feel like I have to shrink to fit my own life. I adopted a dog. Her name is Maple. She's scared of plastic bags and barks at rainbows on the wall, but she curls up beside me every night like I'm the center of her world. And you know what? That's enough. I started going to therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind you pretend to go to so your partner thinks you're improving. I learned that being sensitive doesn't mean being weak. That setting boundaries isn't the same as being cold. That leaving isn't failure, sometimes. It's the first true act of love toward yourself. A few weeks ago, I ran into someone at a used bookstore. Her name's Hallie. She was wearing paint-stained jeans and a ponytail that kept falling apart while she browsed the fiction section. We struck up a conversation over a copy of East of Eden, and she told me she teaches at a school for kids with behavioral disorders. She asked what I do. I said, I restore what others forget. She smiled. That's beautiful. We've met for coffee 3 times since then. She doesn't interrupt when I talk. She asks questions. Real ones. And when I told her I once got mocked by my wife for crying during a sea turtle documentary, she said, sea turtles are amazing. I cried when I saw one stuck in plastic too. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm still healing. But for the first time in a long, long time, I feel like I'm not just surviving my story. I'm writing it. And if anyone reading this is still clinging to someone who jokes about your deepest fears in front of strangers, someone who makes you feel small so they can feel tall, please know this. You're not too quiet. You're not too soft. You're not too much of anything. You're you. And that's finally enough.